Welcome back, listeners and viewers of your national award-winning Let's Talk America with host Shana Thornton Radio. I'm Shana. It's been a few weeks since we've been on, but we are so back to be with you right now to talk about a very important topic on this weekend, and it's talking about healthy food choices and also something timely that's happening. I'm no expert or advocate at it, but we certainly have someone on tonight or this evening that certainly is, and I'm talking about the one and only registered dietitian Carolina Schneider. She has been on with us before, a friend of this show. She's talked with us about so many different topics pertaining to nutrition, talking about being a vegetarian, talking about trying to avoid prediabetes and diabetes. And she's on today, on this weekend, special day, to really talk about a topic near your heart, and it still pertains to your physical health. And I know you believe, Carolina, that of course that the physical and mental and emotional are all connected. So we've got to really take care of all of it. But before we kick off, of course, you know, we have a tradition here on Rural Talk of Let's Talk America Radio, where we give our exclusive guests and advocates an opportunity, 1 minute or less, to really talk about their background and what drives their passion to do what they do. Of course, you're a nationally recognized registered dietitian. But why, if I will say, the focus or obsession in a good way with making sure that your patients and other individuals are as healthy as they can be and being mindful of what they put in their body?
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me back. I'm so excited to be here with you again this year. And so I am a registered dietitian, but I actually was a journalist before. So the way I transitioned into nutrition is kind of interesting. I was studying journalism in college, and my roommate at the time, and this is about 10 years ago, she was vegan and followed a plant-based diet. And, we just ate a lot of meals together. And I started eating more plant-based, and I just felt so much better. My energy, my skin, my digestion. So I kind of, was curious about it. I finished school and then I started eating a vegan diet. And then I just realized, wow, I really want to understand why these specific foods make me feel so much better and healthier. So I went back to school to study nutrition for many years. And here I am. And, I think my mission is to help people feel better through food and lifestyle. Of course, exercise and sleep is very important, but it's just helping them understand how can good foods benefit you, especially plant foods, how to get more in your diet and how to really thrive, from eating wholesome, nutritious food. So I love sharing the wisdom and my personal experience and helping others feel better.
Yeah, that's so important. I recently saw a statement that was powerful and it hit me, and I want to talk about it as we segue into our topic for this weekend here on this Saturday. Talking about it said that either your food you're putting in your body is either fighting a disease or it's feeding a disease of some sort. Now, as a registered dietitian, obviously someone who has studied nutrition and its effect on different body types across the world, is that true? Do you see that what we're putting in our body is either fueling the issues or helping?
Absolutely. Could not be more true. We have plenty of scientific research showing how certain food compounds in certain foods can feed disease and essentially can raise inflammation, inflammatory levels in your body, which as a consequence will raise your risk for many chronic conditions. It can raise your blood pressure, your cholesterol levels. We can put you at a higher risk for heart disease. Same with your blood sugar, and your risk for diabetes. So many, food habits can put you at a higher risk for disease. And then on the other side, we have these amazing foods that have been thoroughly studied and have special compounds that help to fight, oxidative stress in your body, help to fight inflammation, help to regulate your cholesterol levels. So it could not be more accurate. I think filling our bodies, nourishing ourselves with good foods that will essentially help our army that we have in us. Our immune system is our personal army. So we want foods that will kind of add more soldiers to this army and help us stay healthy.
What a great point. And for us to certainly remember as we go throughout life, the journey of someone's in their 20s, 30s, or 50s, to keep in mind that what we put in our body is so, so important. Carolina, thank you so much for being on with us. I know you want to discuss something very specific on this day. I know there's a timely bill, a farm bill that is coming through Congress. And interesting enough, as a dietitian, someone who's an advocate for healthy nutrition, having a balanced life, if you will, to help try to fight off disease as much as possible. You have a connection to it, and you wanted to come on and really share your message. And I think many people are familiar with SNAP benefits, right? The Farm Bill may not sound as familiar, but break down to us exactly, you're a journalist, of course, as you know, that's my background as well. Talk to us about this Farm Bill, how it impacts so many different Americans. How does it relate to a dietitian wanting us to choose healthy foods on our table each and every night?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, the Farm Bill is coming up for revision now, end of the month. It's revised every 5 years. And why does that matter? Well, it matters because the Farm Bill includes provisions for nutrition assistance programs in the U.S., such as SNAP, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which many people know as food stamps. It's the same thing. It's just, it got revamped a few years ago and changed the name, but it's essentially the food stamps program. And why does that matter? To me as a dietitian, or to you watching today, even if you don't benefit from SNAP, it matters because 40 million Americans rely on it each month. And these are working Americans. These are people in the workforce that are, trying to make a living. And we know how expensive it is to live, here, and rent, and, just any day-to-day life. It can be very pricey. So 40 million Americans are relying on this. 70% of those are families with children. So now we're talking about families with kids trying to feed their kids and keep them healthy. And the SNAP is a great way to give assistance to these families in the U.S. And why does this matter? So when we are revising the Farm Bill, this is our opportunity as a nation to improve certain programs. Like, so how can we make this better? So just for a little background for you watching today, SNAP currently gives access to foods, healthy foods, fruits, vegetables, beans, all the good foods that we talked about fight disease. But it also gives access to any foods you can buy at a convenience store. So think about it, go to a gas station, you can buy candy, chocolate bars and chips. All of those are also included. So one thing that I propose, as a dietitian, to make this better and improve the nutrition of Americans is to have more strict guidelines for SNAP. So to incentivize people to make the better choices, to buy the fruits, the vegetables, the proteins, and the beans, and to kind of steer clear from what we call junk food, right? So that's one step, I think, that we're talking about today, is how can we suggest this to Congress and get them to make it a little bit tighter in the sense of prioritizing wholesome foods and not so much of the other items. And another thing that I think we talked about last year, we were talking about being vegan and having nutrient deficiencies. We know that unfortunately, even when you're eating a great diet, you can still have nutrient deficiencies. And how does that relate to SNAP? Well, currently, SNAP does not give access to any vitamin supplementation. So if you are someone who's relying on SNAP to buy food, you cannot use those benefits for a supplementation. So we know here, we also talked about this last year, that about 40% of Americans are deficient in vitamin D. On SNAP or not, it doesn't matter. A lot of people are deficient. So I've worked with people who benefit from SNAP actually back in Florida, and I've seen that, they're using their benefits to buy food. They're not going to use that, they can use that to buy vitamin supplementation. So if you go to the doctor and the doctor says, hey, you're severely deficient in vitamin D, which can have many issues we can talk about in a second, they have to use their small budgets to buy supplements. It's very unlikely that people do that when they have to feed their children. So what I propose to Congress, now that we're revising the Farm Bill, is to include vitamin D supplementation into SNAP. It wouldn't cost them anything else. It wouldn't add anything to the program in terms of cost, but it gives people at least an option to use their benefits to get vitamin D in case they need it. So that's kind of what we're here today. I'm really passionate about this because I've seen the struggle and how difficult it is for so many people to feed their families. And I think that's a big nutrient gap that we haven't addressed yet through SNAP.
Thank you so much for sharing your perspective. Let's always have a balanced and fair conversation here on Let's Talk America Radio. Certainly, Carolina, I appreciate your feedback and your advocacy for those individuals that may be listening and saying, well, I see that Catalina, who is a nationally recognized registered dietitian, wants supplements to be included on SNAP, or better known as food stamps across the world to most people, if you will. But what would you say to those that will say, well, can't they just buy foods that are heavy in vitamin D? I'd love to hear your perspective on that as a medical expert. I happen to know that many, a lot of deficiency, if you do have a deficiency. And as you pointed out, it has been well documented that many people across many different groups have a deficiency in vitamin D.
Yes, that is an excellent question. So although we do have many foods that provide vitamin D, and some examples, dairy products, egg yolks, fish, shellfish, all of those are great sources of vitamin D. What we've seen in research in the past few years, especially, with the pandemic, is that even when people are consuming those foods, they are still deficient, or they're still in the lower range. We're simply not getting adequate enough, or we're not absorbing it well enough from food. So we're still deficient even when people consume those foods. So that's definitely an issue. Another thing is the people who don't consume those foods. So vitamin D foods are mostly animal-based. So for someone who's like me, who eats only a plant-based diet, I am at much higher risk for vitamin D because I'm not eating eggs, I'm not eating seafood. So I'm relying on like fortified foods, which are okay, but again, it's not enough to get to the high levels. And then people also may be thinking, well, can I just get vitamin D from the sun? And yes, absolutely, that is probably the best way to get vitamin D. But in practice, in real life, we're told to wear sunscreen. We're told to minimize sun exposure. We're told to stay indoors. We're working from home. I'm working from home. I'm always indoors. So in practice, it's not as simple to get vitamin D from the sun. And unfortunately, we know most of us can't get enough vitamin D in our blood from food alone. So that's when supplements can come in. And again, it's not for everyone. If you go to the doctor and they say your vitamin D levels are excellent, you're doing everything right, great. But, this is for the people who are deficient and are at a high risk for, chronic conditions because they're deficient. Then we want to supplement because that's the most effective way to get your levels up.
Wow, so important. Talk to us. I know we talked about vitamin D, but of course, you being a dietitian and having so much information on nutrition, how important is it for the other minerals, if you will, in our bodies to be up to date? We often hear vitamin D, that has gotten a lot of traction in recent years, but what about magnesium or calcium or even iron levels? I know a lot of women, of course, who have not reached menopause sometimes will struggle with anemia. How important is it to make sure that when you are going to your provider, that you're getting all your numbers checked and making sure you're keeping up with what needs to be, if it's through a balanced diet or with supplements?
Absolutely. So, as you talk about here, a balanced diet is key. And, getting your nutrients from food first is the best approach. And then if you have to supplement, that's where supplementation comes in. But all vitamins are important. But absolutely, for certain populations, some vitamins are more, they need to be more of the focus than others. So for example, women, like as you said, iron is extremely important. We lose blood every month, being women, and in that we lose a lot of iron. So iron is essential for your blood cells. You're transporting oxygen through your body. So if you're deficient, you may feel tired, right? You have anemia. Over time, if you don't take care of that, that can have really, really detrimental consequences. Your nervous system, just so many chronic conditions that are associated with iron deficiency and other deficiencies. Something like vitamin B12. If you eat meat, that's probably not a concern, but if you're not eating animal products, that is a huge concern. It can affect your nervous system over time. It can be extremely dangerous to have a vitamin B12 deficiency. But you may not know that because we're really not taught that. And when we do our blood work, depending on where you go, they don't do the full panel. So it's important that you take responsibility or the initiative to ask your doctor, can we check all my micronutrient levels, which are your vitamins and your minerals? Can we do a full panel, because you may not know. And the thing is, with these deficiencies, the symptoms are all very similar. So if you're feeling fatigued, you could have a myriad of deficiencies because all the symptoms are very similar. So getting adequate levels is so important. Really, the biggest reason is to prevent disease and illness. And that's really what we're living to thrive and to stay healthy. And that's where, vitamins and minerals are extremely important. And most of us in the US who are eating a standard American diet are not getting adequate levels of many vitamins and fiber, etc.
Yeah, thank you so much. We have Carolina Schneider on with us, and she is a registered dietitian. She's on talking about so many different topics, of course, talking about a balanced diet, talking about needing supplements, of course, seeking that advice from your provider first, wherever you are. She is in LA, giving us some great tips. And also talking about a timely farm bill that's on the table, giving her perspective and her advocacy for it. Since you brought up the topic of the farm bill, which is a topic that's very timely right now. We're talking about food. I also think we'd be remiss if we did not bring up food deserts. Okay, Carolina, if you will, because you and I both know this here is the world that we live in. And in the United States, we can go to certain parts of cities with zip codes, and there seems to be different selections, right? If we're being upfront and practical about it. From your perspective as an individual who advocates for healthy, balanced nutrition, what would your tips be to family members out there who are listening to us saying, I go to my local grocery and I hear what you're saying about trying to eat healthy and not feeding diseases that are out there, from heart disease and diabetes that are so rampant right now, affecting so many different areas and all zip codes. What do you say when they're saying, I'm not seeing a great balance of fresh selection of vegetables or fruit? What do they do with that if they're on SNAP, if they're receiving SNAP benefits or not?
Absolutely. And that is a huge issue that we have in the US. And go figure, we have the biggest obesity epidemic here, but at the same time we have food deserts. It blows my mind. So when it comes to that, obviously we want to prioritize fresh foods. If that's not accessible to you, there are many things that you can do, whether you're a SNAP or not, to improve your family's health and your own health. So a few things, frozen fruits and vegetables are excellent. They're extremely nutritious. They get a bad rap because they're in the frozen aisle, but they are, if you're looking for just fruits and vegetables with no added ingredients, if you look the ingredient label, it just says, I don't know, mango, blueberries, or broccoli and cauliflower. That's excellent. These are inexpensive and they are not shelf stable, but they have a longer shelf life. You can keep them frozen and they're very nutritious. Other things that can be very nutritious are canned beans. Now, the issue with canned foods is that usually they have a high sodium or, a lot of salt. And all you have to do for that, if you can't find a low salt option for your beans, for example, or your chickpeas or your peas, all you have to do is rinse them really well. So just put them up through a strainer, just rinse it really well, and that removes a lot of that added salt. And again, beans, chickpeas, lentils, peas are all super nutritious foods. And another thing that you can do, kind of relying on easy fruit. So you see here behind me, I have some apples, some bananas. These are usually inexpensive. They're available all year round. And, any fruits that you can get your hands on is excellent. But these are easy to kind of take it with you on the go. If you have your kids are going to school, you want to pack their lunch, it's pretty easy to pack an apple there. You just rinse it a little bit. Bananas, you can just take it on the go. You don't have to wash or anything. So keeping in mind these foods that are still budget friendly, are so nutritious, but just makes your life a little bit easier. And
Nice.
then you mentioned with SNAP, what people can do too. If you're not in a food desert and you have an option to shop at a local independent grocery store or a natural product store, which most of us have access to, those are a great option. I'll tell you why. A lot of these stores prioritize fresh fruits and vegetables from local farmers. So now you're getting access to fresh foods that are coming, from your region, and you're supporting local farmers as well, which need the support. Now we
Okay.
have all these huge companies taking over. We want to support our local farmers. So these stores are great. They have great products. They're usually, again, more inexpensive because they're sourcing locally. So there's just some tips that, what people can do, and just try to focus on wholesome foods as much as you can, no matter where you're
Yes.
at. Try to choose real food, stay away from packaged,
Okay.
chips, right? Like things that you can't really recognize. Just try as best as you can to take single ingredient foods, eggs, beans, fruits, veggies.
Okay, what great advice. So that option's out there. And then I know, like you said, there are also some online options now that will also deliver for free. And from my understanding, those sometimes will take SNAP benefits and also and also possibly those delivered or sometimes even shipped depending on the fresh product.
Yes, and absolutely. I'm glad you brought this up because a lot of these, food delivery programs and even these independent grocery stores that have
Mhm,
healthier products, a lot of them accept SNAP. Most of them accept SNAP. So if you go to the USDA website, you can look up,
mhm.
in your area, your zip code, what stores you have access to through SNAP, and you'll be surprised to see there's quite a lot of good stuff there that people just may not know.
Yeah, yeah, such great information. Carolina Schneider, always a pleasure to have you on today, talking about nutrition, a balanced diet, and also a topic near and dear to your heart, talking about the Farm Bill and giving your perspective and opinion on it. Before you leave us, anything else you do want to mention about that Farm Bill and how you would like different Americans throughout the country or throughout the world, all our global viewers as well, to stay up to date?
Absolutely. One way that we can help, if you're listening, you're like, well, how can I help SNAP and the SNAP beneficiaries? It's actually very easy. There is this great nonprofit organization called Organic and Natural Health Association. They've done all the work for us. They wrote a letter to Congress explaining why do we need vitamin D, why this is so important for Americans and nutrition in general. And all you have to do, you go to their website. It's all for vitamind.org. You go to the Take Action tab, you put your name, your zip code, and the letter auto populates. So you really don't have to write anything. And you just send it to your local Congress representative. It takes about 2 minutes. And again, maybe if this doesn't affect you, think about the 40 million Americans that rely on it and children. So at least we're doing our part to help make this program a little bit better.
Carolina, before you get out of here as well, give us some quick nutrition tips, if you will. As you know, millions of children throughout the United States are back in the classroom. And unfortunately, we're starting to see COVID numbers creep up again with hospitalizations, also RSV, different viruses also thriving, in particular among our pediatric groups. Of course, I know you advocate for healthy families in general. We want to make sure we're putting as healthy nutrition as possible into our young ones, right? So we can possibly help them stay as healthy as possible. Of course, you and I both know people can do the best they can do as well. And sometimes you can still get sick. Obviously, we do recognize that as well. But what are some any quick meals, if you can, that a parent won't feel so guilty about that perhaps is tasty and nutrition, okay? Because I know you are very disciplined and very focused as a dietitian, but you know, Carolina, that children are not so easy to persuade and convince that
Mm-hmm.
that wonderful, colorful selection of fruit you have behind you are always the best thing to have. So talk to us and help so many parents out there, like myself and millions of others, wanting their children to eat healthy and saying, no, you can't have cheese pizza again.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to kids, the goal is to add and not subtract. So what I mean by that is focus on adding these good foods that benefit their health: fruits, vegetables, beans, lean proteins, whole grains like whole wheat pasta, whole wheat, brown rice. Focus on adding versus taking it away. Because when you tell a child, well, you can't have the pizza, guess what, right? It's probably not going to work. So instead, what you say is, hey, you can have a slice of pizza, but before that, we're going to eat, this little steamed broccoli with a little
Okay.
cheese, to make it fun. So try to add and make it
Nice.
almost like a pairing. Like you can have this, but you're also going to have this.
Okay.
That way they don't feel so deprived. And try to think of ways to sneak in some vegetables if you have a picky eater at home. And I know veggies can be a difficult one for them. Making a smoothie with strawberries and bananas that's very sweet. And then sneak in some spinach in there. You can sneak in
Nice.
some cauliflower even, and they won't even taste it and they won't
Okay.
see it. So, looking for recipes where you can sneak in some vegetables. One great one that I like to use is pasta sauce. So most kids love pasta,
Yeah.
and you do two things with their pasta. You can buy something like a lentil pasta or chickpea pasta that has a lot more nutrition, and again, it
Nice.
tastes pretty much the same. And in their pasta sauce, you can add some spinach, you can chop some carrots, and just cook it all together, so it's not so it's like one thing, and it tastes delicious, and you probably won't even notice if you chop it up small enough and you cook it. So just a few ways to get those veggies as part of their diet, because the sooner you do that, the more likely they are to become acclimated and start enjoying these foods early on. But yes, just as much as you can, fruits are excellent. They're sweet and most kids like it. So making that a part of their day to day so they get used to that from the beginning.
Nice, nice. And you're such a great point. The earlier you do it, the better off you will be. And I love your method to saying adding and not subtracting. You're right. Because, yeah, when you pull away, sometimes it pushes more forward. So you're absolutely right to add it as, you don't want to say compromise as a parent, but you certainly want them to have a healthy relationship with food. And I think that's so, so important. Carolina, before you leave us, that's a topic that's not touched on often, to have a healthy relationship where as mothers and as fathers, our children see us selecting good choices, and talk about also for us to be mindful of making sure that we're not making food the villain for so many things, because obviously there are young people around the world listening to mom in the mirror perhaps talk about weight, and that 3 and 4 year old associating things with it. So, and of course, I'm sure certainly as a dietitian, you would advocate for us to make sure that's a healthy relationship that's there, and not one that's a polarizing one that could perhaps emotionally damage our children later in life.
Absolutely. And I've seen that so much. And I've seen children with eating disorders that's coming from a parent that is just a mirror image of a parent, and the parent is at home demonizing foods, good foods, bad foods, and putting them into these really drastic categories and saying one or the other, or making someone feel guilty for eating like a slice of pizza. And that starts so early, and you may not even notice it's happening, but children absorb everything so early, and that is such an unhealthy habit for a teenager. I think when they grow into teenager and they're looking on social media, their body
Yep.
image issues, and they think of mom
Yes.
saying, this is bad food, this is going to make you look a certain
Yeah.
way, and you really grasp that. So it's important that two things: that one, you set a good example at home of balance. We want balance, like explaining this is why we eat fruits and vegetables, this is why we need to eat these good
Yeah.
foods. But also, you should have some fun foods. You go to the birthday party, you eat a piece of
Yeah.
cake, that's completely fine, right? So it's about, eating both foods, eating a lot of the good foods,
Yeah.
maybe not so much of the other ones, but allowing them to experience that. Because the last thing you want to do, and that was my second point, is this restriction of food, of demonizing foods as bad, because then guess what? They're going to say, okay, I can't have the cake. I can't have the cake. And then one day, guess what? They're going to say, I'm tired of it. I'm going to eat all the cake. And then they develop that really
That's right.
imbalanced relationship.
It's not a healthy balance. And before you get out of here, such a great conversation. We're speaking with the one and only registered dietitian, Carolina Schneider. You are listening to Real Talk. You're watching Let's Talk America Radio out here on social media. Carolina is really breaking down some great information for us to stay up to date on nutrition. Before you leave us, you mentioned the S word of social media. Can't help but think of body imagery with our people. Also, people in their 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, Carolina, as well. It's not just our 13 and 14-year-olds or 17-year-olds as well. He's so much of a highlight on body surgeries that are taking place. BBL is just one of many. Tummy tucks, right? It's all over the place. The mommy makeover. There's so many different things out there. And, obviously to each his own. If you're an adult, you're going to make those decisions that you deem fine or necessary for you to maintain your happiness. But really quick before you leave us, I think sometimes you see people using those things, the tummy tuck, the BBLs, the mommy makeover, whatever. It's so many different things out there, you know that. In place sometimes of diet and exercise. And I'm not beating anybody up because it is very tough. We know that for diet and exercise. Nobody knows that more than a dietitian trying to advocate individuals to eat right. But talk about if you will, the balance of that. Because, and from my understanding, when they even get the tummy shrinking procedures, right, the gastro surgeries, you see so much, the root of it is still being pushed to eat properly and to not overeat. So talk with us about how all the surgeries and after it looks great, but you still have to watch what you're putting in your mouth.
Absolutely. I actually work with a gastroenterologist. We created an online course for this reason because she was tired of seeing people, go through the surgery, which is it's a big surgery. It's a huge life change. They have to modify their diet drastically, for the first few months. And then, after a few months, they gain all the way back, or they gain even more than before because your stomach is a muscle. It can starts to expand again. So what we were frustrated with that is because a lot of people, and I know, and I completely agree that weight loss and dietary change is so difficult. I know it. I see it every day working with patients, but sometimes people don't try the lifestyle change, or they don't spend enough time learning about it, and they go for the quick fix, the easy fix, the pill, the surgery, and then they gain all the way back. And that's such an incredible stress to someone who goes through all of that. So my suggestion is always to all dietitians out there and people going through this is to work on lifestyle changes first. So learning how to eat. That's it. Learning how to eat, and really trying the right way to eat better, exercise, being mindful, putting effort on that. And if all fails, then you can explore weight loss medication. There could be some hormonal issues that are preventing you from losing weight. So yes, there are cases where people do everything and there's still something rooted in them that's not allowing them. That's a very small population, though. Most people are able to lose weight and live a healthy lifestyle just by eating better and exercising without any drastic approaches. So that's really what we try to go for.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. And I do, before you leave us, so many great questions for you, but we're going to let you go here on this weekend, Saturday. But the one last one is obviously, I don't want to name any particular drug out there, but we have all seen the trending stories of the new class of medications that people are 20 and 30 pounds off of. And just being careful here, of course, they're classified for diabetes, but we know there are providers prescribing it for people that are often pre-diabetic who are also struggling with the weight loss. And I don't need to tell a dietitian that so much of the diseases of heart disease, inflammation, those things are tied directly to our obesity levels here in the whole world, but in particular in the United States. Carolina, talk to us about it. I'd love to know your perspective as a dietitian. Are you in support of that class of medicine? Or, because you're starting to see individuals not full-blown diabetics, the physicians are saying, let's lose the weight so you can get away from the pre-diabetic label.
So yes and no, mostly no. And I'll tell you why. Because many cases, like you said, these people are not pre-diabetic. They don't have any blood sugar disruptions. They are healthy people who are overweight, but perhaps have not tried the hard way, which is lifestyle change. So weight loss, it shouldn't be a temporary thing. It should be something that you can do it forever, in a sense that you start eating better, and then you lose the weight naturally. It's not like a drastic diet that you do for a few months and then you gain the weight back. So it's very hard to change your lifestyle and just simply eat better. So for those who have not tried that route, that's always the route. Medication can have a short-term benefit. Yes, it works. Yes, but it doesn't work forever. If you don't change your lifestyle, if you don't learn how to eat well and exercise and be healthy, you gain the weight back, and you have, a lot of complications from taking these medications long term. So if you are pre-diabetic, if you've tried everything, if you're high risk for diabetes and your doctor says, okay, this medication temporarily will help you get there, but you have to change your lifestyle, great, let's do that. But for most people who are healthy, who don't have, they're lucky to not have any diabetes or pre-diabetes, and are taking this medication, it really hurts me, because it's sort of like a shortcut that people are taking, and health practitioners are prescribing. Again, I'm generalizing. In some cases it's good, but I think we should all learn how to eat better first, doctors included, and teach that. If all fails, you can explore other routes.
And you bring up a valid point that I'm not sure a lot of people are recognizing, Carolina, is the fact that you're saying it's temporary, right? So you're saying these class of medications, especially if you're not diabetic, obviously, if you're pre-diabetic or you wanted to lose weight, or maybe diabetes runs in your family, you're saying it's not intended to take for the rest of your life.
Correct. So, they're essentially appetite suppressants. So you're taking in less calories, so you're losing weight. Now, if you stop we are not supposed to take them forever, obviously, but if you lose the weight and you stop taking them, but you don't change your diet and you don't change your eating habits, you gain the weight back. It's actually very easy to gain the weight back, much easier than it is to lose it. So you go through all this kind of stress, and you lose the weight. And then if you don't change anything else, guess what? You're going to go back to where you were before. So changing your lifestyle is key. That should be everyone's goal, is just let me eat better. That way you don't have to go through all these, drastic approaches to lose weight. You just naturally lose weight by eating better.
I mean, you make a valid point. At the end of the day, there is no true shortcut to it. At the end, you're going to still have to make those changes. And I'll tell you this, we've interviewed so many exercise trainers, and they have even said, as much as they run and push, they're saying you cannot beat a bad diet in any way. They're saying you just can't outrun it. You can't run a marathon and get rid of bad food in your body. And that's from exercise trainers. They're even admitting that as well. So you're so right that we've got to do our best to have that discipline and focus, because we all know food tastes so good. And Kathleen, I want to say this before we head off. We know also there are components to many foods today that are addictive. Right. So, I mean, I think that does need to certainly be touched on or acknowledged somewhat, because we've seen the studies, at least I have, where you've had rats taking sugar and it's addiction. You're seeing it and they keep going for it. And of course, we're humans, not rats. But obviously, those experiments, if those things are done to really make some translation. So for that woman that's watching you right now, she's sitting in San Diego and she's saying, I need to lose weight, Carolina. I know this. I know I do. But she, not to be comedic, but she's saying that the honey buns and the slice of cake are calling her name. Certain times of month. What would you say to her?
Absolutely. So the same way that we get those foods into our diet as a habit, we can make better habits, and habits are really hard to break. So my recommendation is the same as for kids. Let's start to add better foods versus removing everything at once, right? We want to make this a sustainable transition. So focus on getting, even if you're still eating your high sugar foods, focus on eating more fruits, more vegetables, more beans, foods that actually fill you up. What you will notice is your body will crave sugar much, much less. So the more that you're satiated with the good foods, the less room you have for, and the less cravings you have. And a lot of times the cravings for sugar come from simply being malnourished. Even though you're eating a lot, you're not eating enough nutrients. Or you're, restricting certain foods like whole carbohydrates, like the keto diet, people restrict all carbohydrates. Well, carbohydrates are your best source of energy, fruits, veggies. So then your body will crave sugar even more. So start adding the good foods, slowly decreasing your consumption. Don't try to do it really drastically. That really doesn't work for some people maybe, but focus on adding more natural sugars from fruits, which is an excellent food to add. And then you would notice slowly your palate changes and you become more accustomed to the good foods and you crave sugar less. So just add more and then slowly decrease and cut off the sugar, which is an addiction, definitely.
Yeah, so true. Carolina Schneider, always a pleasure to have you on Let's Talk America Radio, talking about nutrition, choosing the right foods, which she acknowledges is not always easy, but she certainly believes you're capable of it for a long-term life of quality. That's the word right there. Carolina, can you tell our national viewers and international viewers and listeners where they can connect with you for additional information about your advocacy and your work?
Absolutely. So to learn more about SNAP and how to get vitamin D into SNAP to help millions of Americans, just go to all4vitamind.org. And that's the number 4, all4vitamind.org. And you can find me on Instagram as Carolina the Green RD, and that's for registered dietitian. And I have some yummy recipes there that you can try to share with your kiddos who don't love vegetables. Hopefully that helps.
I love it. Thank you, Carolina, so much for joining us on Let's Talk America Radio. We're going to have you back on because the holidays are knocking. And of course, so many people fall off the wagon. But you're going to get us back on and make sure we stay on it forever. That's the goal. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thanks for watching another episode of Real Talk, produced by Let's Talk America Radio. You can see we had a great conversation, in-depth discussion with world-renowned dietitian Carolina Schneider, and so excited and grateful to have her on, offering her perspective. Remember, she gave general information on your health, but more specific questions and concerns about your health and your body, because everybody's body differs. Please seek a medical advice from your own provider wherever you are. If you're sitting in Atlanta or if you're sitting in Brooklyn or in Seattle, certainly go see your provider and get your numbers and know what you're talking about, and use this segment with Carolina as a great way to segue with your provider and making sure you're empowered about your own body and what's going on. Thanks for watching us. For additional information, visit ltaradio.com. Stay connected on Fabulous Facebook, on Instagram, and also X, better known or formerly known as Twitter, as well as TikTok. We're out there. And you can find us at LTA Radio. That's LTA Radio. Take care, everyone, and we shall see you soon. More important discussions on your health coming your way. I'm Shana. Carolina, see you, everyone.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.